See if this works. You are live. Hello, everybody. Still not showing anything, but what? Welcome.
Hey, Mega. Hey, baby girl.
Hey, baby girl. Hi, Mega. And welcome everybody in here. And we got our special guest, Josh, from Know Your Slots. And we're really excited to have him because I love what he does on his webpage. Lots of information. And hello, a little bit of nothing. Hi, May. Hi, Kenneth.
Hey, Anna.
Hi, Roxy.
Yay.
Everybody saying hi to Josh.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone.
Yeah. Jackie and I have both known Josh for many years. We've both been Rudies. I've been Rudy I'm going on 4. And I think Jackie's almost going on 5 here pretty soon.
No, 4. So, February is 4.
Yeah. But
that first year, though, that's pretty good.
What's that, Josh?
You both were in that first year, though, so that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whoops, I can't hear. Wonder if I should put it up a little bit. Is that the Shimmers?
Yes. Hey, the Shimmers. Good evening. Hey, Ronnie.
Oh, hang on.
Hey, Roxy.
Volume there.
Hey, Kenneth.
There we go. Now I can hear. Hey guys, you ready to ask Josh some questions? Hey Anna, how are you doing? Hi Helen. Thanks for coming in, you guys. Hey Shimmers. So, you guys all know Josh. He has Know Your Slots webpage, which is full of information on slots, hotels, just so much. And I invited him on here because, you know, I'm not a big reader, and I just wanted to pick his brain about some information or give us some information, because I do read a little bit, but I'm not a big reader. So for those people that don't like to read, this is your chance to ask your questions. So Josh, if you want to say anything, go ahead. Wait, sure. You want to talk about how about we talk about what we think about the Mlife program that's coming to MGM?
But let's do one quick thing. Let's have Josh introduce himself and what exactly he does with the blog that I believe he has. And that way then they'll know, you know, if they don't know who he is,
sure,
they'll get an idea.
I agree. Go ahead.
Sure. So the website is called knowyourslots.com. So nice and easy. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, also just Know Your Slots, all one word. And what I do is I write every single day. Well, I post something every single day. I fortunately don't have to write every single day, but every single day something new is posted on the site, new information, updated information about how slots work, comps work, travel reviews, sort of my experiences going to different parts of the country and visiting different casinos. You know, trying to dispel myths that people have that may sort of make them fear the worst in casinos and what the reality of the situation is. I try to surface, you know, interesting information about like how the soup is made. So sometimes I get to get a little behind the scenes peek from some of the companies that do these things. And so I try to share those when I can. And really the goal is to offer a little bit of a different perspective than the slot channels do. Slot channels many times will teach you about new games, but it's in the process of watching them play. And so sometimes it can be difficult to pick that information out of the 5-minute mark of a 20-minute video, for instance. And so I can add those videos to my articles and showcase what the slot community is doing every day and all that great work. But I can also provide some more specific direction and answers about how things are going. So I look at, you know, everything from, you know, how a game works to like where the best payback is in Nevada. And I really try to just help people who want to explore these questions get the answers that they're looking for.
That's awesome.
So with that being said, Josh, one question came to my mind. Which state has the best payback? Is it Nevada?
So Nevada is tough because you have some of the best paying slots anywhere in Nevada, and you have some of the worst paying slots anywhere in Nevada, because there's not a one size fits all setup to the state. If you go to a place like Reno, Reno has probably some of the best slots in terms of payback in the country. But if you go to the Las Vegas Strip, as many know, you have sort of a tourism penalty. There tend to be a lower average payout on the strip. So it's not just a state. Sometimes it's a region, or sometimes it's a given market. So is it very competitive, or is it tourist driven, or is it something different? Um, so it can depend on a lot of things. We also have certain parts of the country where we simply don't know the answers because they're not required to report. So like many of the tribal gaming properties do not have to report their paybacks because they're on their own land and they can do what they want. And there are a few exceptions to that, like in Connecticut, thankfully, but in most places there aren't. So it's not a perfect answer to your question, but there is the nice thing is that for the areas that this information is available, you can look at the data, you can see how it's changing. I try to write about that stuff from time to time to sort of bring that stuff to light. For instance, I noticed that the slots downtown were starting to sometimes pay worse than the strip, which is a very interesting development. So I write about why those changes may be happening, what could be impacting it, and that kind of stuff as well.
So what do you think about, if we're just talking about like the Las Vegas region, what do you think of more of the local, like Summerland casinos, Red Rock and them, where they're not on the strip and they're not on Fremont? What do you think about their paybacks?
So those numbers definitely look a little bit better. The ones that target the locals tend to pay better, and it's because the locals know better to some degree. So you see better video poker payback tables, you see better overall slot paybacks. The reporting for Las Vegas is divided into zones. So the downtown area is separated from the strip, which is separated from like sort of the off strip, off downtown properties. So you can see those small differences, and they do have enough of a difference that it can make a difference if you're playing a lot.
Got it. And what do you think is one of the worst states for paybacks have you seen?
So I see good and bad just about everywhere. The reality is that some of the corporations that run casinos in markets where they show payback, some of them show worse paybacks than others. An example would be Atlantic City, where both Caesars and MGM have properties, and those properties have to report their payback numbers. And the three Caesars casinos, whether before or after the ownership changes, because Tropicana is now a Caesars property, Bally's is no longer Caesars property, they were among the worst paying ones, especially on penny slots, whereas Borgata had a consistently higher payback. So if you think that like these companies probably follow a blueprint throughout the country, it would be concerning to me if you're a Caesars player to see Caesars consistently lower than MGM, because it indicates that MGM is probably paying you better as a whole. These are the types of things you can look at in markets where they have to separate out the data. In Vegas, they do this weird thing where all the casinos in a certain area are pooled together. So you see this one number and it covers every casino in that zone. So you don't know if, for instance, one property is doing better than the other. The only way you know is when El Cortez says we pay 40% better than the strip. You can look at the strip numbers and say, well, I understand where El Cortez is going to land. But that's their marketing doing that. And so they're willing to reveal that because they are better, right? So if you're worse, you're probably going to keep your mouth shut.
Got it. Because that's what I find is, like, if I go to Pennsylvania, it's really hard to win there. Like, and for my host, he was stating like Pennsylvania, the payback is, like for what they have to pay to the state or whatever, the payback is very low. So that's where I find, between, as you stated, Atlantic City and, Pennsylvania, I find it very tough to win anything. Whereas I go to Vegas, I at least feel like my money goes further versus here on the East Coast. And I know, Josh, you live up in the Northeast in Connecticut area. So I don't know. And I have been up there, but it's been many years of going and playing casinos down there. And I know, now Washington, D.C. area, Baltimore, Maryland area has casinos. So I don't know what their paybacks are, but
everybody's agreeing with you in the chat, Jackie.
Really?
Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
personally played in a Pennsylvania casino, so I don't really have any first world experience. I actually intend on doing so because I've driven by like a bunch of them going back and forth to Rocky Gap in Maryland. So it seems silly that I'm driving by 3 casinos and not stopping at any of them to at least check them out. But um, yeah, I do hear difficulties in Pennsylvania. The numbers I've seen are all rolled up. So the problem is that you don't have a denomination breakdown. So like you don't know if the penny slots are brutal and it's being made up by the high limit slots and coming to an average that looks okay. Atlantic City, you can get the breakdown by denomination once a year, so at least you have a bit more clarity. And in Connecticut, they break it down by denomination as well, so you can see, how the two casinos compete against each other. So we do at least have some helpful reporting in some parts of the Northeast that give you a little bit more of an understanding.
Same. I feel the same way I rock say at home here. Like, I can go and spend so much money at my local here where I can make it last in Vegas a lot longer. I don't know why that is, but it is. Do you want to answer some questions?
Avoid our locals.
Sure. I already see
Okay.
some questions coming
You
along
guys
here.
have any questions for Josh? Go ahead. I've seen one back here.
So PJ Slots and Entertainment said Maryland is terrible to worst. So what's weird about Maryland is their floor is 87%, which is above what many penny slot machines can be set to, because many can be set to 85%. So I've had an interesting experience where Horseshoe Casino, which is a Caesars property, I always feel like I'm getting smacked around. But if I go to Live, I feel like I have a decent run. I don't really recall ever
Hello,
getting
Ronnie.
skunked there. And at Rocky Gap, I've had sort of 1-1, right? So, one really tough road and one where I left ahead after like 4 or 5 days of being there. So, I think it can depend, and it can also depend on how each casino sets things up. I happened to get to see some of the papers of how they were setting up slots at Maryland Live when they were moving them around, and not all of their penny slots were set at the same number. So you had some of the older ones set higher, and some of the newer ones set lower, and that kind of indicates to me you want to play the older ones. But that's not unusual in a lot of casinos, actually. So
What do you find, with penny slots? What do you find, which penny slots tend to have the best payback versus others? Can you give one versus the other one an example?
So
Like I always
okay,
say, like Dragon Link versus Buffalo. Like I can win more back on Dragon Link, I feel, than Buffalo. But like just an example of something, compared with the penny slots.
So
Sorry about
most slot machines are set up with when they're programmed with a half dozen payout choices, and the casino gets to choose which of those six they want to use. And usually they choose the one that's closest to what their goal is, right? So if their goal is to get an 88% average on their slot floor for pennies, they might, if they have a choice of like 85, 87, 90, they'll choose 87 because it's closest to 88, right? So in theory, the game's design is going to determine more of like what your chances of winning are, because like a hard game is going to give big wins less often, and an easier game is going to give small wins more often. And so if you're a fan of games like Quick Hit or Quick Spin or some of these games where they just keep paying you out little nuggets, you're probably a less volatile type of player. Whereas if you're playing the Buffaloes and the Dragon Links and so forth, you like chasing those bigger wins. And so you're willing to take a beating to try to get them, right? So different players have different sort of interests. And so I don't think that there's necessarily one versus another in a given casino that's going to pay better, because they're going to all be sort of set up based on the casino's preference. But, I tend to shift towards harder games when I'm doing well, because I want to push and see if I can make my money go even farther. I tend to favor games that are very much easier when I'm being beat up, because I don't want to lose my money that fast, right? So I think I shift my approach personally based on what kind of, how long have I been at the casino? What's my budget looking like? Am I going to hang on for my few hours that I plan to be there that day, or do I need to course correct?
Okay, Josh Ray has a question there for you, Josh, if you want to read it.
Hold on. I'd scroll up. Why is it your comps can change day by day on your Mlife app? I might check tonight, not have a comp at a certain So they're doing some weird stuff on the tech side right now. I've had all sorts of weird issues even getting into the app. I think because of the transition, they're redoing their website, but they're doing it like in real time, and they're breaking things all left and right now. So if you're talking about like today, like recently, that could very well be it. One thing I've also noticed though is that sometimes like rooms that weren't available to me suddenly become available, and then vice versa, just based on room availability, sometimes based on the tweaking of offers under the hood, which they claim they do monthly, but I've seen ample evidence that it happens sometimes mid-month as well, and just sort of quietly. So there was a weird inconsistency to the tech there. The thing about the big companies is they seem like they have everything together sometimes, but they don't. I tried to redeem free play at Caesars and I had to push the number 9, which is, I don't know why pushing the number 9 is to do with anything, but like that's apparently the button to activate your free play. There's no button that actually says, like, or in Mlife it's yes, right, or okay. So it's like, I think some of these companies carry through old tech that tends to break down a little bit more often than it should, and they're trying to get their way out of it, but it's taking forever.
Okay, PJ had a question here. What about the myth of using your card versus not using your player's card?
So slots are built to work without a player's card system built onto it altogether, right? They have to be able to, like if you go to the airport, you don't put a player's card in, but you can still play those slots. And so the payback and everything regarding that is not set up through the player's card system. It's set up through the direct slot itself. And so putting in a player's card doesn't change anything, except if you're not using your player's card, you are choosing to give up any of the comps you would earn by letting them see what you're doing, right? The whole point of the player's card is it's a trade-off. You give them data and they give you comps. And if you don't give them the data, they're not going to give you your dollars for food. You're not going to get your, as big of an offer because you're just letting that play not be recorded. So, there's nothing that will change the payback just by inserting a player's card, but you are giving up something by not using your player's card. And I know that there are people out there who will swear up and down the only time they get a hand pay is with the player's card pulled out. I will say my only time with a hand pay has been with my player's card in, and the only time I've ever lost my shirt is with my player's card in too, right? So it can go both ways. That's the randomness of slots.
Right. Okay, Joel Love, he says, if the slots are using random generator, how can anyone truly win?
In the long term, the expectation is you won't. And that's the truth, because these games are all designed with the house edge in mind, right? And that's not just slots, it's video poker, it's craps, it's blackjack, right? So the longer you play, the more wagers you make, the more data points you put into that, the more likely over time you will approach what they expect you to get paid, right? So if it's a slot, you're talking, whatever, 88, 90, 94%, depending on low limit, high limit, etc. If you're talking, blackjack, it's a couple of percent less depending on the rules of the game. If it's craps, that's a wide variation of paybacks depending on the bet you're making, right? There's good bets and bad bets on tables like that. So that's the reality of it. So, how can you guarantee a win? The first time you get considerably ahead, you stop playing and you never play again. I wish there wasn't the truth, but that's the reality of it. We're playing games that in the long run pay for the lights, the chandeliers, the equipment that's on the casino floor.
Okay, Roxy has a question for you too. Do you see hers?
I'm looking for it.
What
would
she says? You say a higher bet on a lower denom or a lower bet on a higher denom. Like for example, 250 on a penny denom or 250 on a 10-cent denom.
So there's a couple ways to answer this. So let's just take a single machine. Let's pretend we're looking at a Lightning Link machine. You got your 4 denominations and you have pennies and dimes, and you could play the same wager on both of those. Some casinos will reward those who play at dimes with a higher payback percentage. So enough play over enough period of time, there will start to be a sort of a separation. Some casinos set them all to the same, and so the answer is it doesn't make a difference. Now let's also assume that there's a high limit version of Lightning Link that starts at dimes, right? So that one you can't do 250, but let's say you could, right? The high limit machine is more likely to be a better bet than the one that has the 4 denominations starting at pennies, because you have a better expectation that one's set a little bit higher, right? So my preference would always be start with the high limit machine. That's your best option. Second best would be dimes. Third best would be pennies. Now, someone will say, oh, but I can't win the mini as often. But what you have to remember is the mini is a flat jackpot. So they just insert that in place of whatever number would have been there. So like on a penny denomination, it replaces some of the $10 coins, right? Or on a nickel denomination, the $50 coin. So it's not changing the odds of getting any particular prize. It's just what it labels it as when you get it.
Interesting.
And I also see, Josh, like one thing I like about the higher denom for like Dragon Link and Lightning Links is that versus 10 cent on the lower limit of Dragon Link or Lightning Link, the number of, like 25 or 50
lines, the number of lines
lines.
you can play.
Yeah, you get more lines on the high limit, and yes, you're betting $5 versus if you're playing 10 cents on the lower limit one, and you're only getting like 25 lines. So it's same as even the $1. You bet $5 on the high limit versus the low limit, you only get 5 lines, and on the other one you get, I think, 25 lines. So you have a chance of at least getting part of your money back on the high limit one than the low limit one. So
Yeah, and that's also another aspect of volatility, right? When you have 50 lines, you have 50 ways to win, but each way to win is going to pay less than when you have 25 lines, which then sort
right.
of puts more of the weight into each line to compared to 5 lines, which now you're putting all the weight into 5 of them, right? So if your wager's the same and you're going down in the number of lines, those lines will pay more, but they will pay less often. So generally speaking, it should average out over time. But can you ride out the losses when you have a 5 line game to get to those big hits? That's the challenge, right? Whereas the 50 line games, again, this is just going back to volatility, right? The 50 line games, you just get smaller wins more often because you have more lines that can connect. So it's just preference and guts, and
Right.
so that's what it comes down to.
Okay, the Shimmers have a question. Jackie, can you read it?
Yeah, I've got an Mlife comp question. With MGM taking over Cosmopolitan, what should loyal identity play members expect? Will MGM acknowledge their play and keep their offers or match their tier?
So generally in acquisitions, there's definitely some sort of calculations that go to keep the loyal players happy when they move everybody over. So one thing is definitely if you're a higher level player at Cosmo, you should definitely see some sort of a conversion to a tier at Mlife. The thing when they buy a casino is they also get the data, right? So they know what you've been doing, they know your coin in, they know your budgets, they have all of that information. So they can map that to everything and sort of line it up to match with Mlife. So I would expect that you'll definitely see the transition will recognize your play. You'll probably see your win loss. So when they bought Empire City in New York, my win loss records from playing in Empire City before they bought them started showing up in my Mlife portals, even the years where they didn't own them at all. And so they have that historical data. They do use that to do their calculations. So you should still get rewarded for that. Now, will the offers be the same as Cosmo? I don't know what MGM's formula is compared to Cosmos in terms of the generosity of the offers. I'd heard during the pandemic that they actually lowered the percentage that they put towards offers at Cosmo through good authority, which is, given they were at the high end of the range before, it's not surprising that they took a step down during the pandemic. But I think that will remain to be seen exactly how they switch over the offers. The nice thing though about Mlife is that if your play is brought in, you'll get offers for all of their properties, right? So that would open up Aria, that would open up Bellagio, that would open up, everything. And so, that might mean that you get access to suites across the board, like at Delano and Mandalay Bay, that you couldn't have got because you were only a Cosmo player. So there'll probably be some give and take. But I would expect that they would recognize your play and map that to offers that make sense for your play.
And Josh, being we're talking about that, and with Mirage being sold, Cosmo being bought, now with MGM, changing their new rewards, what do you think is going to come about with the new rewards? Do you think it's going to make it more challenging in order to keep your tier status? Do you think the comps are going to be lower? Do you think, I don't know too much about Caesars because I don't really play at a Caesars property, but what are your thoughts on that?
So we know a few things that are definite that have been announced at this point. So for instance, we learned that non-gaming spend, the number of tier credits per dollar is going way down. You used to get 25 tier credits per dollar for every dollar you spent on charges to your room, your hotel bill. Now it's going down to 4. So that's 1/6 the earnings rate. And regional properties, not in Las Vegas, were earning less to begin with, but they were still earning 8 points per dollar. So they've been halved. So if you earned your tier through a lot of non-gaming spend, or that really helped you, that's going to make your life a lot more difficult. For the gamblers, we actually have no idea because they're no longer going to tell us how to earn a tier credit. It's just time on machine, size of bet, like all that sort of hokey, vague language that doesn't really give you confidence that you really know what's going on. And so that's the challenge. And they've already done that with points, which is now going to be called slot dollars. And they've already done that with express comps, which are now going to call points. That's not confusing. The points are no longer points, and the non-points are now points. So if you're following along, but so they've already sort of taken away the definitions of how you earn those and how fast you earn those. So we don't know. It's always been the case that you've earned faster in Las Vegas than the regional properties. But the fact that they changed that across the board for the non-gaming spend gives me pause, but we'll have to actually see what happens on February 1st, because if they don't tinker with that, then for gamblers, it may be business as usual.
I agree, Melba.
So do you think, I was going to ask, like, you know, they say for the amount of time you play. So does that mean sitting at one machine, and if you sit there for 2 hours, you can earn more? Or does it mean if you play for 5 minutes and you get up, play at another machine,
you can play at any machine?
Like,
yeah. The thing to keep in mind, and some people don't realize this, is like there's a calculation that they do, and part of what they look at is if you play for a few minutes, if you're a hit and run kind of player, or if you're playing for a few hours, and giving them enough shots at your money, right? Because again, the more wagers you make, the more likely you're bringing the formula to their side of the column, right? Because it starts to smooth out, like, what if you got a big bonus? What if you got a jackpot? You start to bring it closer to where they want you to be. So their formulas definitely encourage that. But yes, it doesn't have to be one machine, but like, keep in mind, if you keep getting up every 5 minutes, you're 5 minutes gambling, 3 minutes not, 5 minutes gambling, 3 minutes not. And so they're not counting the time when you're walking around. So if you're one of those people that hunker down and just hammer a Lightning Link machine, for instance, for an hour, they've got an hour of gambling time recorded for you. So they like that. They like, a lot of smaller wagers sometimes over one big wager, right? Like the person who plays $10 roulette for an hour, they like more than the person who plays $100 roulette double or nothing once and walks away, right? So because that they get one shot at your money versus, dozens. So that's the idea. And so when they say, time on machine and amount of wager, basically they're just saying, based on how much they expect you to lose. Like, it's called a theoretical loss. And so, they know how much the game is supposed to make over time. They know how many wagers you've made. They know how long you've been playing. And so they can say, well, she put $1,000 worth of wagers in the machine. We expect her to lose $100. You might have lost 10. You might have won 100. You might have lost 300. But to them, over time, the machines will earn what they're supposed to earn. And so that's how they calculate what kind of player you are.
1 second.
And I'm kind of wondering, because, like, for instance, I'm platinum at the Palazzo and Venetian, and I find it really challenging there at times to try and keep it. And they even changed their status and point system and everything like that. Where it's 40,000 points, it doesn't seem like it's a lot, but it's kind of hard unless you are local, where you can go and play constantly. Where for me, I'm on the East Coast, so I can only make a few trips a year because I can't run out there for 2 days and run back at, the amount of time of flying. So that's where, in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, is it going to be similar to how the Venetian and the Plaza, does their comps or their tier credits, for MGM? That's what's coming to my mind when it comes to that. So.
I mean, I think under the hood, that's what's going to happen. So where they were giving out points pretty consistently, no matter how well the game paid or not, I have a feeling that what's going to happen is the games that pay the worst are probably going to give the most points, and the games that pay the least are going to give the least points. And that's exactly how the Grazier program has always worked. It's been based on Theo, which is the amount of money they expect you to lose, and you earn the points based on that. So that when some people who paid attention when they made the changes on points and express comps noted that the worst paying penny slots were still kind of about where they were, whereas like high payback video poker tanked, those types of things, they could see the difference. So I would be very surprised if the same thing didn't happen for tier credits. I think they're just trying to make it consistently based on how much we make off of you. These are how many tier credits you're going to get. We just don't know the formula because they don't want to tell us.
Okay. Mark Adams has a question for you. Okay. Online gambling. Okay. Any speculation on online gambling, short and long term?
So we're in a weird place here in Connecticut because we actually got it in October. So when they got sports betting approved, they threw in the unexpected approval of online gaming as well. So DraftKings and FanDuel both have casinos in Connecticut. There's a couple of things that I really like. One is that the payback on the slots is many times publicly published on these sites. So when you go into the rules, it'll say this game pays 95% or this game pays 96%. And that's the second thing. The games that would pay 85% in many casinos at pennies pay 96%, like Dancing Drums, on these online sites. So you do notice a very big difference in how these games play when you're talking 86% versus 96%. So that's kind of nice. I think that it's going to be a slow and steady rollout. I think states with casinos that are trying to protect the physical casinos are going to look at places like New Jersey, where the physical casinos are sliding and the online casinos are gaining, and they're going to be nervous about that, because that means that it's, there's the risk that they're not supporting the physical casinos in the right way by taking competition and throwing it at their feet. Even though they are running those casinos, they don't make the same money because of the paybacks and because they have to share it with someone like DraftKings. So I think that means it's going to be slower. I think sports betting just got faster because it's a new market for many people. And so it's like, it's fresh money as opposed to cannibalizing something that exists. So I would say sports betting will roll out much, much faster than online gaming. But for those of us who have access to it, it's interesting. I don't like playing it too much because I like the casino environment, but if they send me the right offer at the right time and it looks like it could be a good one for me, I will many times give it a go.
How about Mega? She's got a question for you. Jackie, can you see her question?
Mlife changed from 900, or her Mlife changed from 900 free play dollars.
No, way down.
She asked that question too. I actually wanted to go back to that because it's one I get it periodically.
She's got two.
Yes. So let's start there, Mega. Why would your offers change if you haven't been in 2 years? So some casinos time out play that's too old. I noticed that my Mlife offers changed when I hit the 2-year mark on a trip where I low rolled them and my offers spiked. And so they could be factoring in play that dropped off the radar. And they might be still giving you an offer because they know you're a good player, but because there's no recent history, they're kind of hedging their bets. And that could be the impact of that. Sometimes though, if you go too long, they start bumping up the offer, so they really want to sweeten the deal and get you out there. So it could also depend on how desperate they are for players at a given time. Many of you probably have seen the reports that Vegas has had like some of their best months in recent history. So that might be the reason for the dip. They're not like trying to bring back like inactive players right now, and it might change when they get more desperate. I definitely saw a little bit of that as the waves of the pandemic were going through. You saw the offer spike when you saw all sorts of cancellations happening, and you saw them drop a little bit when. So that's the ebb and flow sometimes of the offer. Sometimes they just factor in the outside conditions, where you are kind of in their cycle, and that can have an impact. What I have seen though is that the offers rebound at some certain point. So I would expect for you at some point, you'll see an offer that comes back to where it was as maybe a way to try to woo you in at that point.
She has another question.
Yeah.
When you hit a jackpot from the state that has state tax, why should I force to pay it when my state does not have a tax? I personally do not take out taxes at all.
So unfortunately, that's the states making decisions on what the casinos have to do to be able to operate. So for instance, in Massachusetts, I hit my first personal hand pay in July of last year, and I have to file a Massachusetts state tax form because Massachusetts is one of those states where they have a mandatory state tax. So it's not really the casino's choice. It's the states that allow them to exist saying that you must do this. And many times it's the commercial casinos. It's usually not the tribal gaming casinos because they kind of have their own rules. But they can, of course, be in the compact, which means then they have to do it. So it just really depends on like what their rules of having a casino do.
Okay, I'm going to answer Holly K because she asked me a question about Canada and our tax thing. When I go to Vegas, like here in Canada, of course, it's tax free. So when we play at the casinos and hit a jackpot, we never have to pay taxes. It's all in our pocket and gone home. So anyways, when I'm down in the States, they take off automatically, no questions asked, 30%. And just to show you here, this just happened to me. This from last year, I got a hand pay for, I think it was $3,500 and something. Anyways, they took $1,000, but I got my check in the mail. There you can see from the Treasury, the United States Treasury. And the company I go through here in Canada, they do all the work for me, is called Casino Tax Rebate. And they get me what is called is it an ITIN number?
ITIN, yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And I pay them $50 for that, and I've had it for years. I just got it renewed because I've been going to Vegas for like ever. And so I just got it renewed. It cost me $50. And they charged me, I sent in like 4 tickets, and so they handle everything. They fill out the forms, everything. All I have to do is sign them online. That's it, and they send them off. They deal with with the, what would you call it there that handles this, Josh? I don't know. Like the tax people, what?
The IRS?
Yeah, the IRS. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the IRS, that's it. So they deal with the IRS and everything. And so a few weeks ago, I didn't have it, and I just phoned them to see what was going on, because it's been 6-7 months since I filed. And yeah, they sent me a thing showing me that the process of it going through and everything. And then they said in a few weeks you'll get your check. And I got it in the mail. So there you go. They charged me a total of $197 to do 4 tax receipts, and the rest I will get like in the mail. So yeah, we do get it all back. So that's your answer,
That's
Holly.
good to know. That's one of the questions I hear a lot, is like, why does it take so long in Canada to get the money back? And I know the IRS, even for us here in the US, everything's gotten slowed down over the last couple of years because they're just falling behind on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Josh, when everything was okay, it only usually took me 12 weeks.
That's great.
That's it, like up to 3 months. But it has taken sometimes as long as 18 months, because they sent one of my big tax ones. It was a $4,800 return of US money, and they sent it to Mexico. but that was because somebody did the wrong drop down on the address, and then they put it to Mexico. So I had to wait a while to get that back, but I did get it back. So you can, all Canadians, like I said, just look online, and this is one place that I go to. And they've been good. I've used them for 12 years, and they're called Casino Tax Rebate. They are out of Thunder Bay, Ontario, and they communicate with you everything. They're super, super good.
The fee doesn't sound too outrageous given the amount of work involved, so that's also good.
Yeah, it is really good. Like, because I'm not, like tech savvy, or I don't. It about signing papers and all that stuff. They just make your life so easy. Like, all you have to do is send them the pictures of your little tax slips that the casino gives you, and they do the rest. So, excellent. Yeah. So that's your answer, Holly K.
And so, we're talking about the taxes, and I've been, reading the chat. So what is your perspective, Josh, on if you win hand pays, if you should have the taxes taken out, or if you should just take the full amount, especially in Vegas, unless the state mandatory, makes you take it out. What are your thoughts on that?
So I encourage people to, so first of all, I always start by saying I am not an accountant, so don't take this as a professional accounting advice, right? I always encourage people to talk things over with their accountant, because everybody's situation is different. And one of the things the reason why I say that is that people don't realize how much the deductions have changed since they doubled the standard deduction a couple of years ago in the US. So it used to be that a couple of hand pays and, maybe some mortgage write-offs, and you'd easily clear the minimum deduction requirement, so you could write off your losses against your winnings and do that sort of thing. And then they doubled it, so now you have to get twice as much to be able to hit that point, because if you use the standard deduction, you can't write off your losses. It's not the standard deduction is just like a simple blob that comes off of your taxes. So if you're the type of person that only gets 1 or 2 hand pays a year, you might want to consider the taxes to be deducted if you want to just avoid sort of the question mark of will you owe or not owe at the end of the year, because obviously your circumstances may change over the course of the year. But some people have taxes pulled over pulled as it is. They take extra out just so they don't owe each year, and so they can use that as a buffer. So each person's situation is different. And so I always just encourage people to think about what they've set themselves up for, and and make the right decision for them. I personally tend to not have the taxes taken out because I tend to always get a refund every year, and so if it chips away at that, I'd rather have the cash then. And I'm not going to get a penalty if I have to pay a small amount of taxes, because it's not going to be a huge difference between what I owe and what I paid. So because I don't get a lot of hand pays. I'm not a bettor that tends to get them. I got
not like Jackie.
Well, I mean, I got 3 last year, 2 from the online site. So I guess if the online
Jackie got
like that.
How many in September? Like,
I didn't get that many, but I mean, I've had as many as like 27 in a year. So, right. And that's where I have to be very careful, because, I have been audited by the IRS for my slot wins. Mm-hmm. And it took me 3 months to go and actually show them that I did not owe any money.
Like, find it all.
Yeah, and I deducted anything on my big wins, so if it was an $18,000 win, I mean, they took out like $5,000 off of that right. win, and yet the IRS still came back to me and, audited me on those kind of things. So
the more hand pays you get, and the more the total gambling wins are, the more likely you're going to get audited. Now, the flip side to that is there's not as many audits being done right now. So this is kind of a period where people may get lucky and fly under the radar. But keep in mind, there's all sorts of other things. Like, they won't just look at your win-loss records from a casino and say, okay, we believe you. They want to see much more. They want to see more of a paper trail. They want to see ATM withdrawals that match up with how much you said you spent. They want to see gambling logs. How much did you bring to the casino? How much did you leave with? If you put down which machines you played in the serial number, you're even in better shape, right? So your proof is definitely at audit time, right? Like, when you file, you can put anything down on the paper, but if they choose to take a look at it, you're gonna have to back all that up. So that's also something to mention. Kaz meant add a question. I did want to roll back to that. So if you're a player from the UK, they are like Canada, a country that has negotiated that you should not have to pay taxes. But if you don't have an ITIN number, you have to go through a pretty lengthy process to get that money back. And once you're registered with an ITIN number, and many times casinos will do it for you, or like the companies like Leanne's using will register for you, then that can speed it up in the future, because once you have an ITIN number, they can link it faster, they can process it faster. And sometimes you might not even have to have it taken out at the beginning, depending on the country you're from. So you do not, as a UK player, have to pay taxes to the US, but you might have to have it held at the beginning and then get refunded, just like Leanne does. Depends on how you're set up.
Yeah.
So, and then yes, $1,200 is the magic number for when they will do paperwork. But theoretically, according to the IRS rules, you're supposed to claim all your winnings, and you're supposed to then be able to write off all your losses. So if you leave the casino up $200 and you don't claim that, theoretically, you're not providing a complete accounting of your gambling. So again, if you get audited and they realize that, that's going to be a problem. So
Sarah has a question.
Sarah.
If you have taken out what? If you have
I get the question. So yeah, so Sarah, if taxes are pulled at the time, you still have to file it, because because the taxes are, if you understand how U.S. taxes work, your actual tax rate depends on where you land income wise. And so as you earn more money, you move into a more expensive tier for money on top of it. And gambling always goes to the very top, right? Because your salary is the floor, and you get taxed usually pretty accurately by your employer. And then it's whatever that top tax rate is. So let's say you say take out 15%, but then your tax rate's 20%. They're going to realize that there's a delta that you still owe. But if you took out 15% and your tax rate's 12%, they're going to owe you money, right? So you still have to file it, and you still have to type in the numbers of how much they took out and how much you won, because then they're going to have to do a calculation. So yeah, that still has to go in there, even if they took out taxes beforehand.
And you guys have to remember, the IRS can audit you for up to 7 years, correct, Josh?
I believe that's the number. I can't say I'm very familiar with an IRS audit. I've, knock on wood, never
Canada
had one.
is 10. Canada is 10 years.
I believe
7 sounds right, because I've always
years.
been told keep your bank records for 7 years, all that stuff, and I'm sure that's because of the IRS. Yeah.
Yep. So just remember that, guys. They can always come back and audit you, even, 5 years later, and, you trying to figure out all those things because, like I said, it happened to me and it wasn't a
Yeah,
recent
Jackie,
one.
she had
It
to go
was,
to phone all her
it was
hotels,
something from
everything.
3 years ago where all of a sudden I had to go and dig and dig and dig and trying to remember where did you go, what did you play, what other places, trying to get all your bank account information. It makes it really challenging. So I just say, keep that in mind, guys. And yet your chance, I mean, it's all depends on your luck on that, but just think of those things just to be safe.
Yeah, if you have one or two hand pays, the odds of you actually getting audited because of the hand pay by itself is not going to be that high. But when you're getting into the 20s and 30s, that's a bigger number. That's obviously depends on how many other people had that year, but that would definitely be one of those things that could trigger the computer to say, maybe this is the person we want to talk to this time. And yeah, I got 3 hand pays this year, 2 online, and I'm sort of glad that I started doing more detailed gambling logs in the past couple of years, because that just makes me feel a little better if I need to back it up. And many times when I go to a casino, the ATM withdrawal matches exactly what my budget is, so it makes it very easy to say, yep, I pulled out $500 and that was my $500 budget for this trip. As you can see here, I lost it all, right? So it just reduces the risk of issues. So going back to what Karen said, I think that's probably why your accountant is skittish. They know that can come back, and since the accountant usually signs off on the return, they're probably CYA in that case.
Yeah. Josh Ray has a question. What's your thoughts on class 2 bingo machines like VGT versus class 3 machines?
Yeah, it's a good question. And as I talk to the manufacturers, it seems like increasingly the math is just getting closer and closer to being identical. But obviously, then it just comes down to what the casinos are setting the paybacks at. And you do have this weird quirk that instead of the outcome coming from inside the machine, it's coming from bingo outside the machine, right? But the anecdotal data that I've seen is usually the class 2 casinos tend to offer better payouts than the class 3 because they have that whatever, for whatever reason, people just sort of see it differently, and so they do that accordingly. And so I've seen a couple of casinos where they purposely advertise that they're above market as a class 2 property to kind of indicate like looser machines and that kind of thing. And that's usually a sign that they're set higher. That doesn't mean that everyone is, right? Like we don't really know because all the class 2 are tribal gaming. Tribal gaming doesn't have to report, but that's the anecdotal thing that I've seen. But like if you see a let's pick dancing drums, which I know is made in both class 2 and class 3. If you see it in class 3 versus class 2, it should play, other than a little slower, pretty similarly in the long run.
Can you say, like, is class 3 machines the ones that are in Vegas, or are they okay?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different machine types that are out there that are not traditional slots, even though they look like them. And I have people yelling at me, yes, they're slots. Look at it. It looks just like a slot. Just because you see reels doesn't mean it's a slot. And so class 2 machines are an example of that. And basically they use bingo as a way to get around the regulations that they can't have slots. And the reason why slots are called class 3 is because that's the tribal gaming definition for like a Vegas style slot machine, a game of chance. And it also covers things like, craps and roulette played, in the standard way. So bingo is sort of one of the ways that they worked around it. And initially it played very differently, but over time, as mathematicians started to work it and figure it out, they've gotten it closer and closer to how a slot machine behaves. There's another one called historic horse racing. So you might see these at like racetracks. Kentucky, I believe, is a very popular market for them. Virginia has a number of Rosie's parlors. And so you're basically wagering on the outcome of a horse race that took place at some time in the past. But they look like slots, and if you play it based on like just hitting the play button, they play like slots. And so these are ways that they get around. So like horse racing's allowed, slots aren't. This is how we're going to get slots, quote unquote, in the casino. So that's basically what they are. They're just sort of ways to get around the regulations, but increasingly they're designed to act more and more like slot machines in both like sort of math, like how often you get paid, how much you get paid, the themes of games, and that kind of thing. So
I have a question. Alice in Casino Land is in here, and I know she plays a lot of poker.
Yep.
And Jackie also loves playing Keno. So, like, does the money roll over more in those games, like, than playing slots?
Well, video poker has the weird quirk that you also need to know what you're doing to get your best payouts, right? Because if you don't play the hands correctly, you will give up money that versus if you play the hands correctly. You know, the nice thing about a deck of cards is the number of outcomes, the number of cards is defined. So you can actually mathematically know the best hand, how to handle each hand, and maximize your payout. So video poker tends to have pay tables that are better, but casinos also expect that some people won't play them well. And so that's how they make some extra money off of them over people that do know how to play them well. And some casinos, you know, you can tell. There's a guy who runs the slot floor Cosmo who says you can usually look at video poker, and if they pay better, they probably pay better on everything else too, right? Because that's just their philosophy on the floor. And if they pay worse, then they probably pay worse everywhere else. And if you look at sort of the casinos that have better video poker options, they tend to also see better numbers in the reporting. So I think video poker is a nice little key to like what kind of a casino are you in, and it sort of helps me understand whether I really want to be there a lot or not. I did want to say something. Joanne just put something in here about New York. So New York is actually not class 2. New York is what I call a none of the above option. Their system is based on digital scratch offs. So basically the New York lottery has the right to sell scratch offs, and you can go into like gas station or whatever, and you can buy your scratch off. The slot type machines that if you go into like Empire City or Resorts World and those casinos, you are basically every time hitting play, you are buying a digital version of a scratch off. There's a set number of winners and losers. And so that's sort of how that product works. So it doesn't rely on bingo, which is what they call class 2. People sort of call it class 2 because it's different, but it's not class 2 for the definition of class 2. Class 2 literally is bingo and for tribal gaming, and bingo like sort of add-ons, specifically for tribal gaming. These are commercial casinos run by the lottery, but with a different system. I believe Washington, some of those casinos are the same way, because Washington has a similar system. So I think New York and Washington are sort of the two in that program. And so that's why you sometimes see some weird games that you don't see anywhere else. I know like sometimes people talking slot channels, why won't you play that cannonball game? Well, it's because it's a 13-year-old game, and that's the only system that still supports that game, right? So like that's sort of, you get those weird quirks like that. But New York is also interesting because they set a floor on every machine that has to pay back at least 90%. Imagine all those penny slots and other casinos that pay 85%. You go to New York and you have to get paid 90. So I have noticed that you can feel a little bit of a difference in terms of overall payback when you're playing at those casinos. Not surprising that those casinos are trying to get permission to flip to regular casinos so they can pay less.
Angela has a question for you.
I cannot say off the top of my head I remember what Ohio is, but I believe I've seen payback reporting, and that would indicate at least some of them are commercial casinos. And now that I'm thinking about it, like Jack is in, or what used to be Jack was in Cleveland and so forth, right? So I think those should be class 3 unless there's sort of a mix. Some states have both. So I don't want to say 100% that I know for sure what Ohio is across the board, but I presume there's at least some commercial casinos with regular slots, and there might be some other stuff as well.
One thing I don't understand, you guys talk a lot about the bingo. What I don't understand that part of the slots.
So when you have a class 2 game, which is based on bingo, it looks like a slot machine, but usually have a bingo card on the screen, right? And so you basically, your bingo card is when you hit play, you're playing a game of bingo. It just looks like a slot machine. So the game will put your wager into the system, the balls will be drawn, and then based on whether you won or lost at bingo, it'll show you a result on the slot reels that indicate whether you won or lost. So the slots, you see for entertainment purposes only, the reels are for entertainment purposes only. That's because they're really just showing you your outcome in a visual way. Bingo already determined whether you won or lost. So you might hear people say, oh, I know the patterns. I know that's a winning pattern. This is going to be really good. That's because the bingo pattern really determines whether you win or lose.
Okay. Gotcha.
Someone asked about Nevada, and they said, why doesn't Nevada have the lotto system? Oh, that was baby girl Karen.
So Nevada hasn't approved the lottery at all, and because it's commercial gaming out there, they just focus on class 3 gaming. That's what they regulate.
Yeah,
so
they would lose all their money.
So I think that's why you don't see bingo machines in Nevada, because it's a very commercialized state, which allows the standard class 3, and so that's sort of what they go with. I know there's certain games from class 2 gaming that people really get into, the Lucky Duckies and VGT and stuff like that. And I'm hearing that that Aristocrat, which now owns it, may bring those themes into like the regular casino floor because they're so popular in places like Oklahoma. So you might still actually be able to play them just on a regular slot floor. So
Josh has a question on the link games. is each denom its own game, or is the payback set for the whole machine?
On a modern multi-denomination game, the casino has the ability to set different paybacks for different denominations, but they may not choose to, right? So they could choose to just set all 4 or 6 or whatever the same. Many will set higher denominations higher. So yes, they definitely can be different. And what I've also been told is that many times if you notice a change in the number of lines, that usually indicates it's a different game. So sometimes 1 and 2 cent will be the same 50 lines, and then 20 nickel and dime will be 25 lines, whatever the case may be. That change in number of lines means there's also other math changes happening, which means maybe they're not even the same settings available. So that usually indicates a different game, regardless of whether 2 of them are the same or not, for instance. So that's a good hint to look for. But yeah, usually multi-denomination machines, it can be set on each denomination separately. That's assuming the casino chooses to.
Is there a way to know that, Josh, or no?
Just casinos keep paybacks under their vest. So the only thing you really know is if they have to report, and it's whatever they're forced to report, and it's always going to be the bare minimum. They're not going to give more information out than they have to.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with Angela. When you have both lottery and casinos.
Mega Millions is almost 400 million, just saying.
I know.
No one won that on Friday, right?
Nope. It's rolled over, so.
Yeah, just like
I think Canada's highest jackpot we've ever had is like 75 million. That's it. What does that sound? Oh.
It's a speed round. No.
Oh.
I don't know if it's mine or what, but I wanted to also make sure if Karen or if someone can maybe put his link, in the chat, because I know some people were asking about that for Josh's link.
Yeah.
If we can do that, that would be great.
Where's Claudia?
So Mega, I believe Vegas, last time I checked, a slot machine could theoretically go into the 70s. I think that's what their regulation is. I know New Jersey's 83. I can't remember if Nevada's 70 or 75, but that presumes the game can even be set that low. And so this is one of those things that I always sort of remind people is that the casino can't set the machine any lower than the game is designed to be set. So so for instance, Every has told me on multiple occasions, we don't design games outside a range of 85 to 98%. So you won't find an Every machine on the casino floor that pays 60% because they just don't design them to have that capability. And I've heard that from a couple of other manufacturers. I don't believe that, every single slot machine can't go below that. I have to believe that there are companies that are willing to go that low, but most of the major companies, they don't want to design a game that's so tough that you hate it and then never want to play it no matter where you are. And so, these regulations, while theoretically allowing a wide berth, the casinos don't really need to go that low to make tons and tons and tons of money, so they just don't.
Yeah, baby girl said she can't, and Claudia's not here. Probably Claudia could do it. I don't have a wrench, so what I'd say to everybody is look for him on Facebook, right, Josh? Your page is on Facebook.
Yeah, so my website is knowyourslots.com, and then I also have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The handle is all one word, Know Your Slots, no spaces. So so that's how you can find me. And then Yoange, so the machines don't really have to swing because remember, there's a predetermined number of winners and losers. Once everybody buys every card in that stack of scratch offs, the percentage payback they want to receive will be achieved, right? So let's say there's 1 million scratchers and they're designed to pay 90%. Once, if let's say that's $1 per spin, right? So once $1 million worth of scratchers are bought, they're only going to pay out $900,000, and that's how they get to the payback, right? So
there, baby girl got it.
Yay!
Thank you, baby girl.
So that's the trick. Math. The whole point about how these systems are designed is there's a mathematical calculation about how to get it to where it needs to go in the long term. So with slots, the random number generator, everybody's like, well, if it's random, how can you lose over time? Because there's still a set number of outcomes. The reels only have so many spaces on them. You can't stop on a space that doesn't exist. And so once the reels are set up in a specific way to guarantee a certain percentage of winners and losers, and the payouts are set and all that, over time, every stop is expected to be hit over time, in the percentage they're designed to hit. So Yeah, I visually, I feel like that's the easiest thing to describe. It's like, just think of a giant stack of scratchers. So like in the back room that you're buying off of, versus like 100 at a time at a gas station, right? It's just a much bigger stack because there's many more wagers being made, but it's the same idea exactly.
Josh Ray had a question back there for you.
Oh yes. Um, so here's the thing. The data started to change right when Circa opened. Go figure. Um, and so, when you have such a big property open up and the paybacks change immediately when they're fully open, and then you see things like signs like they have an electronic 000 roulette wheel, which usually you wouldn't think they need to go that cheap for something electronic, right? So you get these signs, like these hints that the casino likes to pay a little bit lower. And so when a big property like that pulls down the average, I think that's what you're seeing there. We also had something like Resorts World open. And so Resort World could have pulled up the average if they were paying better. We don't really know because it's all pulled in, but these are the things you can hypothesize about what changed. I don't find it coincidental that I also hear that a lot of people struggle to win at Circa. I have not gambled a dime in Circa because of that, preferring to play at places where I know I usually have a pretty good opportunity like Plaza or El Cortez.
Okay, let's ask one more question. I see Angela, and then we're already coming to our hour. What is your opinion on mid or high betting if you're spending a good amount at each session? If you have an opinion, is it better to sit at one machine for a long time or move around?
So I have a neutral opinion on that. If assuming that all the machines at the casino, like we talked about earlier, set around the same range, right? There's no real long-term or short-term benefit at sitting on one machine for a long time versus jumping around. Other than jumping around stops you from gambling for a moment here and there. So you might slow down your play, and that might be ideal. If you're purposely trying to slow down your play and not like burn your money fast. But other than that, like from a payback percentage or things like that, like if you're presuming similar conditions like same denomination, same overall wager, it's probably not going to make a difference whether you're sitting at one machine or hopping around a little bit. Now, if you're hopping between like high limit, low limit, and things like that, those will certainly types of decisions that will have an impact because we know that higher limit machines tend to be set at a better payback because theoretically you're wagering more. Although you could argue a $3 bet on a $1 slot, the three reels, versus a $10 bet on like a penny denomination slot that you can do on many machines nowadays might not be the same odds, right? So I think that would be what I would say.
Okay. We're gonna just say one thing here. We thank all of you guys for coming, and we appreciate Josh with all his freaking wonderful information. I learned so much. We are gonna have him back in February. We have him scheduled, and we want to kind of compare the Mlife, what's going on there. So we will have him back. I think it's the 23rd. I'm not sure of February.
That was this month. I think it's the 27th.
27th. Okay. Yeah.
And then one more thing. So I'd like to say, so all these questions are great. A lot of what I write about ends up coming out of what I see people asking in the slot community. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to send them in through the social media accounts. Don't hesitate to fill out my contact form on the website. I really want to answer the types of questions and bring to light the information that people want to know. So that, you're helping me.
But this is great interaction.
Of course. Yeah.
It's just like what I said. For me, I'm not a reader. So to sit and listen to you, tell me about this, I really enjoyed it.
For sure. No, this is a lot of fun. I really appreciate everybody joining into the conversation, and thanks for doing this, Leanne. And Jackie.
Thanks,
Josh. And I think when you come to visit us again next month, it'll be really interesting to get that opinion of what is really happening with MGM now, because it'll be in almost its 30-day phase. So it'll be interesting to see, and I'm sure a lot of people will have questions during that time.
Exactly.
When I wrote a few days ago a piece where I said, here's the things I still want to know. And a lot of it was around the tier credits and that, but it was also around, for instance, if you got to, let's say you earned your gold status, you didn't tier match or anything like that. Do you get the gold perks that they promised, like no resort fees starting in February, or do you have to earn gold in 2022 to get it? I know they say certain things, if you tier match, you don't get it, but what if you did earn it last year? Do you get that benefit this year, or do you have to earn it again to get it? So like, we're going to learn some more stuff over the next 30 days. So that'll probably make for a very good conversation by the time we get there.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Angie. She found your site, Josh. There you go. That's good.
Yay.
So, yeah, I'm not kidding you. Josh has a lot of good stuff on there. And as much as I don't read, I get to read some of it, and it's very interesting. So I really enjoy it. But that's why I wanted to have him on here, like, because I'm a lazy ass and I don't read a lot, and so it really helped me. And I hope you guys all enjoyed it. And we thank you for everybody being here. And just a short little thing here. Watch in the next couple of weeks. Leon's going to Vegas for about 3 days, so I just wanted everybody to know I'm gonna get the first taste of that Mlife. So I'll report back to Josh a little bit and see what I can find out. Just from my play, because usually
I think it's gonna be just as challenging as it is in Atlantic City. So,
God, I hope not.
I told her, I was like, you play and you put in so much money, and it's like you get nothing for credits. Like
the old system was that you earned 5 times faster in Las Vegas than you did in other markets. And so if they take away that differential, that the players that got it on the back of Vegas play are going to really struggle. But if they don't change that, then it may not impact anybody. So that's going to be
fingers crossed.
Yes.
Yes, PJ. Borgata's not only still Mlife, but they're now finally merged into the actual Mlife lane. They upgraded their systems last year, so you didn't have that weird thing where it took sometimes things to transfer over, and you had the separate
Karen.
website. So
thank you, everybody.
Okay, well,
we're gonna let Josh go. We know everybody's got to go to work tomorrow, and we appreciate you all. And this was very interesting, and we had a great conversation. And we will do it again. And we do have plans to have, like I said, some other people here in March and April. We're going to do maybe, a couple of lives with some other interesting people. But we're not going to tell you who. So, but anyways, we'll see Josh back here, like he said, February 27th on a Sunday night. So thank you all. Thanks, you, Josh.
Thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, it was great. Loved it.
Thanks everyone for coming to visit and bringing your questions. And again, please go check out his website. And any other questions, feel free to ask him on his website or save them for our next live next month.
Yep.
You guys all have a wonderful evening. Ooh.
Yep.
Wiki.
Neat. What do we say? These gypsies are out.
Gypsies are out. Good night, you guys.
Good night.
Good luck.